Poison, during their multi-decade run, has run into some troubles with other bands, and today we're going to take a look at some groups who feuded with Poison. While a lot has been written about the time Slash auditioned for Poison in the mid-80s, there was a period of time after this where Poison and Guns N' Roses feuded. The source of the feud stemmed from a rock magazine interview Slash gave to Hit Parader in 1987, where he referred to Poison as, and I quote, posers who represent everything wrong with rock and roll. Bryn Bridenthal, who worked for Geffen Records and was a publicist for Guns N' Roses, drew the ire of Poison's band members at a party she attended following a concert by Motley Crue and Whitesnake. She would tell the LA Times she left the party about midnight when Poison bassist Bobby Dahl and frontman Bret Michaels confronted her about Slash's interview and doused her with multiple beers and ice from the champagne bucket before she was escorted out of the venue by security officials. She would claim she received threats against her from Poison's management if she went public with her story, and she in turn filed a $1.1 million lawsuit against the members of the band. The suit was eventually settled out of court, and according to the memorabilia site Gary Rocks, the members of Guns N' Roses banded together and sent Bridenthal a postcard to support their publicist, as you can see here. Although both Poison members declined to provide comment, a representative for the band suggested in a statement that their actions represented, and I quote, a sign of friendship. However, Dahl and Michaels would eventually plead guilty to misdemeanor charges. If you guys remember, Slash auditioned for Poison back in the mid-80s, and while Slash brushed it off as being nothing too serious, claiming he didn't want to dress up in costumes and makeup, Poison drummer Ricky Rocket painted a different picture, telling Decibel Geek in 2017, "We wanted a rock East Coast guy," and then CC DeVille auditioned, and he just made more sense than Slash did. So it was a tough decision because we all like Slash. Slash was really pissed off about it. He was pissed. He was like, "What the F, you guys?" Quiet Riot would release their album Metal Health in 1983, and it would make music history. The album would be the first metal record in history to top the album charts, and while Quiet Riot had a lot to celebrate, their time at the top would be short-lived. A year after Metal Health was released, Quiet Riot, feeling pressured by their label, would release their follow-up Condition Critical. Trying to capitalize off the success of Metal Health, the album's artwork bore a similar resemblance and featured another Slade cover. While it would go platinum in America, it almost sold about a sixth of its predecessor, and things were even more dire for the band when they released their follow-up 1986's Quiet Riot 3. Infighting, drug abuse, and disagreements with the label pointed to a steep decline in the band's popularity. In 1986, the writing was on the wall. The band's album Quiet Riot 3 proved to be a flop, peaking at number 31 with no impactful singles, and they soon started playing smaller venues. It was the same year Quiet Riot were touring with an up-and-coming band named Poison, who just released their debut album Look What the Cat Dragged In. Poison drummer Ricky Rocket would reveal in the book Nothing But a Good Time, "Some of those early tours in the Winnebago were tough. We opened for Quiet Riot in clubs, and at the time, Kevin DeBro and their tour manager were not the easiest people to work with. We had too many restrictions on us. A lot of the audiences were there to see Quiet Riot. They didn't give a damn who the opening act was. We started to embrace that competitiveness." In the same book, Quiet Riot drummer Frankie Benali would concur with Rocket's assessment, claiming that Poison had no rider to speak of, and Benali, feeling bad for them, would frequently fill up plastic bags with food and drinks and bring it over to Poison's dressing room. Howie Huberman, who was one of the early backers of Poison, would reveal in the same book, "I think Poison got into a huge fight one day with Quiet Riot, and at that point, within 2 months, it was a flip-flop, and Quiet Riot would be happy to open for Poison. Poison would let them open for them, and they wouldn't because Bret got into it with Kevin DeBro. It was during that tour Poison's debut album hit a sales milestone, and either as a way to celebrate or get back at Quiet Riot, or both, Poison destroyed the bathroom in one of their dressing rooms. According to Benali, since Quiet Riot was the headliner, they got the bill for the damages, and Ricky Rocket would perfectly summarize what was happening at that point in time, revealing in the same book, "We all go through things. There was some jealousy. They were on their way down, we were on our way up." With Motley Crue and Poison both being prominent during the 80s, you would have thought this feud would have happened during that decade, but it didn't. It happened during the mid-90s, just as Motley Crue had parted ways with frontman Vince Neil and hired John Corabi to make a much more alternative and grungier sounding album, which they put out in 1994. By the mid-1990s, both bands had long faded from relevance due to the rise of alternative rock. Poison would meanwhile release Native Tongue in 1993 that didn't stray as far as Motley Crue did. Poison frontman Bret Michaels wasn't a fan of Motley Crue's self-titled 1994 album and told Noise Creep in 2011 that Crue bassist Nikki Sixx asked Michaels why he never drastically changed the band's sound to keep up with the times, with the frontman recalling, "What confused me about that time period was when Nikki Sixx said that Vince and I were kind of ridiculous. Now these are his words. You and Vince are kind of the same. You don't really pick and choose your fans. You just kind of go out and play music. Well, I thought that's what music's about. I didn't know I was supposed to decide which fan can like or not like my music. Years later, during a concert in Canada in 2010, Michaels told the audience that fans could expect a Poison Motley Crue tour in the future, but Motley Crue's management company denied their clients would tour with Poison at the time. However, a year later, both bands would end up hitting the road together, but in 2018, Nikki Sixx criticized Poison, telling Kerrang!, "I have to say that I don't think that Nirvana and Pearl Jam killed the bands you mentioned," referring to Warrant and Poison. "I think that they killed themselves. They were making copycat music. We, on the other hand, simply imploded." The bands would tour again just this past year alongside Joan Jett and Def Leppard, playing stadiums. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll Stories. Take care.